Hi kittens! I am doing a video request today for one of my fellow tarot enthusiasts that I talk to over on my Facebook page, Henry Kestler. I will link his page for you guys below. He asked me to go into two issues. Firstly, he was interested in finding out what I have to say about emotional baggage, like how readers can get emotional baggage after they've done a reading. I suppose this also pertains to the subject of burnout in a sense as well, which I will go into. And also he asked me to talk about tough questions and about what to do when you feel that the client hasn't gotten the advice or the answer that they wanted. Which was interesting because I've been thinking about that a bit recently as well, the idea of preconceived ideas and client expectations, the idea that a client kind of may have a certain idea of the answer or the advice that you're going to give in mind, and then when intuition doesn't take you down that path and tarot doesn't give the messages that they so desperately wanted, how do you deal with that? I would say that prevention is better than cure when it comes to that, but I'll come to that in a bit. Firstly, I want to address the emotional baggage aspect. I can only speak from personal experience. All different readers have different ways of getting in touch with their own boundaries, centering themselves after readings, making sure that they do not carry around emotional baggage, that they are only kind of 100% invested in the reading and in the client's issue for that time. And then they must have certain techniques in place to help them to kind of ground and center. Grounding and centering is so important in any kind of helping work, really. But I think when it comes to tarot, particularly, because the vast majority of people that are going to be working with a tool like tarot are extremely spiritually centered and live their lives kind of in a very spiritually centered manner. It's very important for them specifically. They feel personally that it's important to be able to center spiritually afterwards and to get back in touch with the core. So there needs to be ways and means of doing that, and I'm just going to talk about my own personal experiences and what I do. Firstly, I think it's really important to understand the value of self-care. If you're a tarot reader and you're giving readings left, right and centre and you're really putting your whole heart into these readings, but you don't place a great amount of value on your well-being or your self-care or on kind of checking in with yourself and having discussions with yourself about how you feel and what's going on with you, then you're very quickly going to experience burnout and you're very quickly going to be taking on a lot of emotional baggage. And this is something that is going to prevent you from being the best tarot reader that you can be. That is for sure. After a while, it's going to leave you feeling resentful or confused, or you're going to have all of these pent up emotions from all of these readings that you've really taken to heart. And actually, you've not let those issues go. You've not released them so that you can be a clear channel for the next reading. And that is something that's so important. So definitely value the whole concept of self-care. Make sure that you, as the reader, as the guide of some kind, have posited enough energy into your own emotional bank to be able to actually give some out to others. If there's nothing in the tank, then you have no right to be passing out energy left, right and centre to everybody, because it's not going to be the best energy that you can muster and you're not going to have anything left for yourself. It's going to be complete exhaustion. I think it's very important to make sure that you work out how much you can take on and work out what commitments you're prepared to make and which ones are going to be too much for you. At the beginning of my journey with my online tarot reading, I think I severely misjudged how much of a commitment I was going to be able to make, and I was giving free readings left, right and centre, just in exchange for feedback, which was wonderful. But after a while, it made me realise that I really needed to start putting some kind of boundaries into place because I was experiencing burnout. I wasn't experiencing so much the emotional baggage. I think for the vast majority of tarot readers that I know and that I communicate with, and I have quite a few good online friendships with several good tarot readers, I think that where the emotional baggage issue tends to come for them is when they have done a reading that really resonated with them, that they really kind of invested themselves into. It took them at a funny angle, or it kind of made them feel something extremely profound. And it's those readings, those specific individual readings, that tend to come along that you really kind of take a bite out of them and you feel like you have digested them. You kind of just can't really shake the feeling either of your concern for the client, or the issue is going on and on in your mind, that kind of thing. I think that normally comes from those 2 or 3 key readings every now and again that will really get you in a profound place, and it's very difficult to let go and release and understand that the reading has been delivered, that was all you could do for that time, and now you need to clear out and become a fresh channel again. So I think, understanding the importance of self-care is paramount. And part of that is recognizing what actually affects you. Recognize what your trigger points are. Because emotional baggage and dealing with emotional difficulties as the result of reading tarot for people often has certain trigger points or root causes. There are certain patterns and cycles that you will be able to identify, particularly if you're finding that emotional baggage is coming on strong on quite a regular basis. Have a look at what kinds of readings you're offering that really tend to get that kind of reaction out of you. Which readings do you find actually trigger some emotional response in you, which is quite difficult to actually free yourself from? Because a lot of the time I think it's important for us to understand our boundaries and limitations with tarot as well. You need to know your remit. Rowan Pendragon, who was a very popular pagan blogger for a long time and now has gone into life coaching and spiritual coaching, I noticed recently on her website that she actually talks about what her remit is when she's doing these intuitive readings. She mentions, for example, that she might not be that great at dealing with issues to do with sexual abuse, just certain things that she feels are above and beyond her remit, things that she would not necessarily recommend that you go to her for. Drug and alcohol abuse was another one. Understanding your remit is key, because I think sometimes as well emotional baggage comes along when we feel we have not been able to adequately deal with somebody's issue because it was completely outside our remit, because we may even have found the issue traumatizing or completely we were unable to relate to it, and we feel that we have fallen short as readers by not being able to delve deeply enough into the issue. So understand your remit and make your remit clear to your potential clients. I think that's important. And I also think referring clients to other people, if you feel that further guidance is needed, does take a degree of weight off of your shoulders when you're really concerned about whether or not you've done enough for a client who has very specific or ongoing issues. So maybe I might have gone a little bit out of my own remit with this video now by saying that. I'm not sure if I kind of went off on one there, but sorry if I did. Know your support network. This is a very important point. I really have a great support network now that I've been doing this for a year or so. And that's meant everything to me. Being able to talk about my issues with other tarot readers and get an exchange on something and be able to understand where they're coming from and what they did and how they dealt with a certain situation when it arose for them has been absolutely vital to me. And the talking that I do on Eclectic Tarot with other readers is vital to me, as is the email correspondence that I have with several readers who've approached me or I've approached them, and a dialogue has been struck up. A large part of my support network is the community of online tarot readers that I've kind of become involved in. And another part of my support network, aside from my strong spiritual core and my spiritual practice, would be the people around me in my life, the people who actually see me writing these tarot readings and understand the energy that I put in. They also understand when I have reached my limit and when I need to just come away from the computer for a little while and just redress any imbalances. Those people really have an understanding of how passionate I am about tarot and how much I love it, but also how much sometimes I need to kind of centre myself, and I need to understand that my well-being needs to be put in the driver's seat at certain times where I might be so intrinsically linked with this client's issue or so obsessed with doing something tarot related that I haven't realised that actually I'm going through quite a bit of stress and I may need to leave and then come back when I'm kind of a little bit more clear and grounded. So yeah, a part of my support network would be people like my best friends and my boyfriend, my mother, the people who regularly see me when I'm in tarot mode, and they can support me and encourage me and praise me for the work I'm doing, but they could also give me a little bit of a smackdown when I need it and help me to understand that, Kellyanne, there is nothing in the tank, please just come and have some lunch, kind of thing. So that's very useful. I also think that it's important to take time for reflection after a reading that's been difficult, after a reading that's affected you in a profound way. Sometimes I do readings for clients, and this could be clients that I've never worked with before, or it could be very, very regular clients. I have several clients who are absolute regulars and have been working with me for over a year. And either way, this could happen either way, but sometimes there's a reading that I do where I just feel very overtly emotional and intense about the subject matter that's come up. I'm concerned about the querent's way forward, and I really hope that the messages from tarot have been interpreted clearly enough by me that they can really get the most out of the reading. And of course I feel that every time, but sometimes there is just this feeling of emotional weight that comes with me after the reading, and I recognise that. That's a very important part of dealing with emotional baggage or emotional issues after giving a reading, is that you recognise that little feeling of weight weight inside you. For me, it's around the solar plexus. You recognize it, and then you give yourself a chance to reflect on it. Just because you've delivered that reading to that querent and the querent has now gone their separate way from you and it's all over, does not mean that the reading itself is over in terms of how it may have psychologically or emotionally affected you or changed you. And I feel that absolutely anything that you do in life has the power to profoundly change you. And a lot of the readings that I've done and a lot of the secrets and circumstances that I've been privy to for the time that I've been reading tarot, and the great sensitivity and empathy that I've had to posit through being able to read the cards like I can and like I do, I feel that comes with a great amount of potential for inner and outer change, and it has changed me. It's completely slanted my world on its axis, and every time I do a reading I feel that a little seed of change has been planted. So within that there comes time for reflection, and that's such an important thing. Do not feel that a tarot journal is simply just for you to write down, you know, the definitions or write down the elements when you're learning them, maybe do a daily draw. Your tarot journal, when you're actually giving readings, can be an opportunity for you to journal about your response to the reading and how you felt about it, and how you feel that the querent could take the advice and posit it healthily into their lives. How do you feel after the reading? How are you grounding and centering? And how did it make you feel during the reading? What do you feel you could have done better? All this kind of thing. If you have any readings that you experienced that were unusual or that were extremely profound, don't be scared to journal about them, write them out of you, really kind of reflect on them, because I think that's such an incredible part of the journey of growth with tarot, and I still do that now. And you know, it's something that I do talk about with the people in my life, but I never ever expose even so much as names. And I know it might sound a little bit overtly cautious because I work online and so on, but genuinely, the people in my life do not even know the names of my clients. I just say, I'm emailing a client. What are you doing? I'm writing a reading for a client. But what I can talk about with them, and what I do feel comfortable talking about with them, is the way that a reading made me feel. So rather than actually discussing the contents of a reading and what a client's specific needs were, which I prefer to keep between myself and the client, I feel there's that kind of connection there that is bound and can't really be broken by talking about it. Plus, I don't wish to have the advice of anybody in my world about what intuition and tarot is positing to me, from me to the client, sorry. So I don't actually want outside advice, so I wouldn't seek it. I wouldn't say to somebody, I have this particular client and this is happening with them. What do you think that, what do you think these messages from tarot would help that person to see? It's completely from here, you know. So I don't really feel the desire to do that. But what I do sometimes feel the desire to do is to say, I did a reading earlier and it really, really drained me. It made me feel something very intense and I'm having difficulty kind of stepping out of it and shaking it off. I feel ready to release it from me, but I just feel a little bit edgy about it or whatever. So, you know, back to discussing the support network that you have in place, understand where your support is and where it comes from and how you can talk about things both with other readers and with people in your life who just basically see you doing something that's very time consuming and it's very high energy and you really are passionate about it, and those people in your life know you in a lot of ways that sometimes it's difficult for you to see yourself, and they will be able to help you to come out of that kind of little feeling of weighted burden. They'll be able to kind of lift it off of you. So these are my ideas when it comes to emotional baggage, and I really think it's very important not to carry it around. As I said at the beginning of the video, if you continue to carry around emotional baggage and you build on that baggage and it becomes more and more and more, your potential to be the best tarot reader that you can be will be severely decreased by that emotional baggage. It definitely will, because you need to completely clear yourself and center yourself before you begin the next reading, and you need to completely adopt and take on and care about the next client's issue. And then when that reading is delivered, you do the same thing again. It's a process. It is a process. And that is one of the reasons that I have a 7-day turnaround on my readings from my shop. The ordinary delivery date will be around 3-4 days, but I do have a 7-day turnaround so that I can make sure that if I have a few readings in my inbox at once that need to be done, then there is time for me to ground, to center, to reconnect, and to become a very, very clear channel that's completely ready and willing, a receptacle, if you like, ready and willing to take on the water of another client's issue, the deep abyssal sea of what's going on with them, and leave behind what was happening with the last client until such a time as I may, if I'm lucky, see them again to redress the issue. So, yeah, these are the ideas I have on emotional baggage. The other question with regard to awkward or difficult questions from querents, I really feel that prevention is better than cure on this front. And I know this might not be very helpful for some people, but with me and with the way I do things, both face to face and online with my tarot readings, I am very clear about how to compose a question, the kinds of questions that are going to be useful and nourishing with tarot, and the kinds of questions which are going to be counterproductive or disempowering. And I'm also very clear about the fact that questions should really be centered on the self. The person who's coming for the reading is the person who's come for the reading. We should be spending as much time as possible discussing that person. It is a person-centered practice from my perspective. We are not going to be talking about, is he with that woman now, or what does he think of me? We're going to be talking from a person-centered perspective, because that is how I feel tarot gives its most nourishing food. So for me, it's prevention is better than cure. I basically explain in my profile what I do, who I am with regard to tarot and what I believe in. And I've seen lately quite a few tarot websites where readers have been giving tarot readings online, and they actually have a section. Oh God, there was a reader the other day from Eclectic Tarot, and she had a great little section. Her name's completely going to escape me now. But I will try and find the website as well and link it below. But she had a great little section about how to compose your question before you actually ask it. Again, this is the idea that prevention is better than cure. If you actually guide your clients to compose a question which is going to be nourishing, which is going to be challenging, which is going to give the most out of the cards, and is not going to be disempowering and reductive like a great many readers feel that yes and no questions are, then you are going to have already cut away a lot of the risk that you're taking in putting your services out there, because you're already going to have explained to your client how best to posit their question and how it's going to give them the best possible answer. For me, yes or no questions have not even been an issue for the time that I've been doing my online readings and kind of putting my expertise out there with regard to tarot, because it's just fundamentally probably not something that a great many people that come across my shop or my online content would think that I catered for, because I do think it's extremely reductive. I don't think it gives tarot the best chance to do its work, and I feel that tarot is a tool that I use to posit my spiritual counselling techniques. It is not in and of itself the oracle. It is the person behind it, the intuition behind it, the empathy that's injected into it, and the belief and love of its symbolism as a universal language. That's what makes a meal of it. That's what makes a cup of tea out of it. It's not just the cards will tell you whether or not you'll get married next year. There's so much more to it than that, and I feel that we denigrate the possibilities that tarot gives us, if you like, by doing that. I am also completely comfortable with the fact that there are people who are giving answers to yes or no questions, who consider themselves to be able to see the future as it was written in stone and that kind of thing, and that is completely fine. I'm not saying that there's a right or wrong way to do it, but I'm very clear about what I give and about what I suggest that a client asks me. So I think when it comes to difficult questions, that's one of the most important things. Let your potential clients know what you offer, what you stand for, what you believe in, the kind of reader that you are, because everybody wants a different kind of help. Everybody needs their specific kind of help. Not everybody is going to want the kind of help that I have to offer with my readings, and I completely appreciate that. And likewise, a lot of people that come for personal development readings and things of that nature, spiritual counselling centered readings, are not going to want the yes or no kind of predict my future, let me know where I'm going kind of readings that others may do. So, you know, it's horses for courses, as we say in England, and I think it's just best to let clients know before they actually ask the question what kind of questions you think would be most helpful to them. With regard to the idea of client expectation, this is something that's very, very difficult. A great many clients, when they come to you, whether they know it or not, will have some sense of preconceived idea of what they want out of the reading, either how they want the reading to make them feel, or what they would like said during the reading, what kind of messages they'd like to come up, even what kind of cards they'd like to see. A lot of clients have those kinds of preconceived ideas, and they don't even realise that they have them. They think they're totally open to what's going to come, but when challenges arise, they're not comfortable with it because they're not receptive to it, and they didn't realise that they weren't receptive to it, but they just aren't, kind of thing. I think it's very important to put any messages across with sensitivity, any messages that you feel that fly in the face of what your client wants, and you can use your instinct on this. You know intuitively, really, when a client is looking for a specific answer or is kind of investing a lot of their hope and faith in one specific answer. You kind of know sometimes. And I think what's important is if the tarot cards that you are receiving and the intuition that you are receiving is giving you cautionary elements, warning messages, anything like that, always present those messages with the utmost sensitivity and present them with practical advice and tips to help the client to deal with those warning elements. You know, for example, if it's a relationship issue and you feel that the cards have certain warning elements and certain ideas regarding the client preparing for another outcome, not the outcome that they were seeking, but a different outcome, what I would suggest is don't just give that message and leave it there. Give messages of advice and support and encouragement, and that is why I always draw 3 advice cards with my full length readings, because they are fantastic for this. They're fantastic for putting the querent in charge of their own life, giving them the keys to the car of their own existence, you know. I think it's important with advice cards that we use them to posit practical, quick fire tips and strategies for helping them with whatever is going to unfold, and for helping them to be as steadfast as they can be and to live from heart level as much as they can. So yeah, I would say definitely posit any warning elements with the utmost sensitivity. Give a balanced perspective. If you're very theatrical and histrionic and you're completely giving the opposite answer than the querent wanted, then that's going to make the querent defensive, it's going to make them upset, it's going to make them hypersensitive. If you explain it in a very balanced way, and you give tips and tricks and all that kind of thing, and you give advice cards, you know, you take them through the warning elements in a motherly way, in a way that is meant to compassionately show them that there are more roads, you know, and that it isn't just kind of like a narrow view. I think that's very important, but I think there's really nothing that you can do to stop the idea of preconceived notions in a client's mind. Some clients are completely open and receptive to the messages of tarot, even though their focus area is very specific. They are still extremely open to the messages. Other clients, whether they know it or not, are actually very invested into the idea of hearing just one thing. Or being told just one thing, or having a reading that just makes them feel one way, and they are not invested into the idea of being challenged. Sometimes that does happen. Let me just have a think. And also with advice cards, I think it's very important that advice cards are used to show a client their options and to show a client what they can do to change any kind of outcome which has been addressed in the tarot cards. So for example, from my perspective, I do not believe that the future is written in stone. If I believed that, I would probably be much more comfortable with the idea of suicide than I am currently. If I had no free will and everything was just pre-written, I think I'd feel uncomfortable with that. So I really believe in that kind of butterfly effect, every action has an equal and opposite reaction, all that kind of good stuff. I posit the theory that we are writing the future as we live in the present. And the future is constantly changing. The end of the book at the moment is blank pages, and the more you write, then the more you get to the end. That's kind of how I see it. So I see the tarot as a tool for self-empowerment. Now, when a client has a very specific idea of what they want the outcome to be, what I'm really trying to do is broaden their horizons. So if I see a specific possibility for an outcome or a situation that's coming into play that I know that the client would not like to see, or that's not the direction that they want to go in, I will use advice cards to give them strategies and tips to help them change the outcome that may be coming into being. That's all I can really do. I can't tell them what the outcome will be, but if we have a discussion and my intuition kicks in, I can say, look, if you continue with this kind of negative cycle or limiting belief, then the potential outcome could be the one that's kind of posited in this card here, where you kind of have to compromise, or you kind of don't get to where you want to go. But if you look at your advice cards, they are telling you XYZ thing about how to strengthen your direction and about how to get clear about what you want, that kind of thing. So I'm still always giving them the power. I'm always empowering them. It's never about me telling them. It's always about them telling themselves through using the intuitive messages of tarot. So I think that's another reason why advice cards are so important. I would say as well, when you have clients coming to you who have questions that are going to be difficult, yes or no questions, questions which seem testing, questions which seem to come from quite a skeptical perspective, or indeed questions that are just extremely tangled and complex. I would say it's very important to learn techniques to keep your energy high, maintain a high vibrational frequency, and also maintain a steadfast grasp on your core principles. Do not go changing your core principles to try and accommodate a client's desires. Every single tarot reader needs to have some kind of ethical construct. The skeletal system, if you like, to their practice is their ethical code. Do not part ways with that because you want to answer a client's question, you want to make that client happy, you want to make that client feel a certain thing. Do not part ways with that. For example, if you do not do readings for absent third parties and you can sense that all your client wants to know is, does he really love me? Does he look at other women? Or is it really, does he really want me? Don't be tempted to just start doing a massive reading where you look into this absent guy's thoughts and feelings. If that's not what you feel you can do, if that's not what you feel is helpful to a client, or if that's not where you feel that your strengths and expertise really lie, say so. Reframe the question. Tell them to reframe the question. Help them reframe the question. You know, as I said, a great many tarot readers on their websites have very delicately, sensitively posited instructions for how best to construct a question so that the client gets the most meat off the bone, if you will. And you are perfectly entitled to do that too. You know, it is within your interest as well as the client's interest that you both get a really good, delicious, nutritious meal out of the reading. So if you feel that there are certain things that a client could change about the question or about their perspective before beginning, don't be afraid to go in there and say that. Don't be afraid to email back, or if it's face to face, to have a frank discussion with them. Because in the end, they will thank you for it, because they'll realise that instead of you just doing what you can to impress them and satisfy them, regardless of what your core ethics are, you're actually having a frank, transparent discussion with them. You're trying to help them to get the best that they can out of the tarot experience. And that's something that will come across as caring. You know, it might initially not be what they want to hear, but it will eventually come across as a very caring and a very honest thing to do. And if you set your reputation up as somebody who is willing to actually come back to a client and say, look, I think the question could be posed this way, or I think your question is reductive, I don't think it's going to help you to take control of your own life and to take matters into your own hands. How about if we address it this way? It's fine to do that. And the other thing I would recommend is, if you do come across a client who has a question that they are very, very set on, and you don't feel that it's part of your remit, or you don't feel that it kind of taps into your expertise or your personal beliefs, have someone to refer to. Have a tarot reader that you know, that you respect, or that you've heard good things about, that you can refer your client to, so that they don't feel that they're completely alone. It's very important for a client not to feel rejected by a tarot reader, but instead just to be directed gently to somebody who can better answer their query. I've had one or two clients come to me with questions that I did not feel personally connected with my way of using tarot and with my spiritual counselling take on things. There is a woman on Etsy, and I had her recommended to me by another tarot reader when I was looking for that more fortune telling, future set in stone, I can tell you if you can win big at the casino kind of thing. And when I found her and I had a look at her recommendations, I had a look at her testimonials, I knew that she would be the woman that I'd be able to refer people to when they had questions that were outside my personal core principles and ethics. So I did that, and it made me feel like I was really still giving the client something. I was directing them gently towards somebody who could answer their query, if I didn't feel they'd be receptive to the kind of readings that I personally do, which are very person-centred and very much about empowerment. So yeah, I think that is a good idea to do, to have somebody to refer to. And maybe a lot of people will disagree with that motion, but that is the motion that I'm putting forward. Sorry, I've been watching the House of Commons a lot, so it's starting to sound a little bit political. What else did I have to say? Yeah, keep your vibrational frequency high. When a client comes to you and you can tell that they have a really strong desire to hear one specific thing, or they have a really strong desire for you to say something specific to them, not only can it be tempting to just give in and go in the direction that you're not really sure you want to go, but you feel that you want to give the client what you can give them, it's also very easy for people who are kind of very emotionally open and switched on and self-aware, like tarot readers often are. It's easy for you to start absorbing that needy, dependent, that clingy, or that very desiring energy that the client is bringing to you or positing into your life. So I think it's very important, if you can feel intuitively that the client really, really wants and desires just one answer from you, or wants and desires only one style of reading from you, make sure that you hold your energy levels high and you put that kind of barrier around you, energetic barrier, so that you know that you can be true to your intuitive messages and to your bond with tarot and to your feelings with regard to the queerance issue. I think that's really important, and I think that it's very easy when you first start out with tarot, particularly, to start taking on the querent's feelings and issues as your own. Your feeling and your intuition and your bond with your deck with regard to that issue is not the same as the client's feelings. You know, you need to actually make a deal with yourself to realize that there is a marked difference, kind of thing. So keep that energetic barrier. Make sure that you come at tarot and come at that query from a very pure place. I think that's really important. And, you know, make sure that they are willing to be receptive. Make sure that they are willing to be challenged. If you feel that you're coming up against any resistance, lead on with sensitivity. But as I said, prevention is better than cure. If you have a website, if you have a profile, if you have an advert in the paper, if you have 5 minutes to talk to the client and consult with the client before you begin, prevention is better than cure. Let them know what you do, what kinds of questions you feel are nurturing and helpful, and ask them, do you feel open and receptive to the idea of being challenged? Because that is what's going to happen ultimately. Okay, thanks for your time, guys. Blessed be.